Well, it's a new program, but the big issue in Tasmania this week is one we've been reporting on for years: forestry. It's nearly 8 years since former Premier Paul Lennon was overheard discussing a plan for a pulp mill with former Gunns chief John Gay at a Hobart restaurant. Yesterday, the company won its final regulatory approvals for the $2.5 billion project. So now the pressure's on to secure finance and start building before the state government permits expire in August. We travelled to Georgetown, which would be the home of the mill, to gauge expectations.
It's an affordable market. Your average house price is $170,000. Your rental price is approximately $200 a week. So it's affordable. There's availability here, and there's all types of properties.
Ready and open for business is the message from Georgetown's Chamber of Commerce. In her day job, Maureen Lacey's a real estate agent and never misses an opportunity to get in a plug.
You can't beat, I guess, the location and the prices that you can get.
It might be a picture postcard location, but after 8 years of being talked about, Ms Lacey says the pulp mill wait has had an impact on the economy.
I guess that's the frustrating part when there's so much potential here, but what we're seeing is, I guess, the uncertainties leading to people wondering whether there are job opportunities here, and some are starting to look elsewhere.
Speculative buyers bought houses a few years ago in anticipation of an influx of workers.
The workers didn't come, and then interest rates going up. The affordability, some owners have already sold, some have got their houses on the market, and some are in stress.
A local engineering firm spent tens of thousands of dollars upskilling its workforce, gearing up for an expansion, and spent close to $100,000 on new buildings after Gunns announced the mill in 2003.
Back then we decided to gear up and put more people on, train more people. Wages were an issue. We end up having to increase people's wages just to get ready for the situation. Then here we are 8 years later and we're still waiting.
Tom Frayne is keen to tender for any structural work if the mill goes ahead, but the company's survival doesn't hinge on it.
We could get by without it. We've got Comalco now. They've signed their new 25-year contract, so that sort of puts us stability in that side of it. Do we really need it? Yes and no.
What are you worried about if it does go ahead?
The loss of labour, the skill level that we've built up here. We're quite worried that it'll probably go chase the dollars, and for us to compete in the market, very hard to do. We're already locked into contracts that we have no choice. That's where it is. So if we lose it, well, if we lose that labour and we've got to increase our costs and everything, well then we become, I wouldn't say unviable, but makes it very hard. For some other businesses, it's tough times. There are over a dozen vacant commercial premises in the town.
Certainly in the retail section it is tough times, and that's probably fair to say. Council's been looking at how we can sort of assist the commercial section. We're in the process at the moment of going through and running a survey just to sort of explore what their dramas are, if we can assist them in any way. Hopefully we should have the results back of that within the next couple of weeks.
However, Mayor Doug Burt says Georgetown's been through plenty of ups and downs.
Georgetown's used to those peaks and troughs of the Bell Bay industry area.
It's the state, not the town, Councillor Burt says needs the mill.
I believe Tasmania does. Georgetown will survive, I think, without the project or with the project. We're a very resilient community.
It's absolutely critical because it's the only project that's planned for the state.
Yeah, it's all for sale.
As the crow flies, the intended site of Gunns Mill is about 10 kilometres away from Carl Stevens' home at Beaconsfield.
My idea was to set up a small computer business and sort of lead a very quiet life, like close to nature.
It hasn't turned out to be a quiet life. He stood for local government as an endorsed Greens candidate on a no pulp mill platform and was elected in 2007. But Mr Stevens quit the party late last year after he says the party tried to gag him.
That's correct, yeah. The Greens are come up with this, what I thought was just a much too simplified idea that they could just stop logging native forest and move into plantations, and the resolution revolved around saving the high conservation forests in return for a pulp mill. And that pulp mill, it was always assumed that that pulp mill was this pulp mill.
The fear among anti-pulp mill campaigners is that they've been sold out in return for an end to large-scale native forest logging.
Because of the fact these statements of principle had one basic goal in mind, and that was to get a social license or an appearance of a social license, so that Gunns could say, oh, we've got approval for a mill. But they didn't mean for a mill, just a mill. They meant their mill.
Buck Emberg has long been involved in environmental campaigning in Tasmania. He marched against the Franklin Dam and walked away from the process which led to the Regional Forest Agreement in 1997. He says they were duped then and now.
There was no sense in continuing, as far as I saw it, to continue with the RFA because the RFA sandbagged us.
Do you see similarities with the process for the RFA and what's happening here today?
Absolutely. The modus operandi with the people in the RFA, who happen to be a number of people who are involved with this movement, the pulp mill movement, very similar. Some of the people are the same. The way they do it is the same. Divide, conquer.
Yesterday, the Federal Environment Minister Tony Burke gave Gunns the final tick of regulatory approval for the mill to operate. Conditions include less chlorine in the bleaching process and the use of plantations, not native forest, as its feedstock.
I do understand the community concern, and I do understand the level of scepticism that is often out there, particularly given some aspects of the history of the project. What needs to be recognised today is there are now tougher environmental conditions, and they are not simply a matter of trust. They are now conditions for the development to go ahead.
A long and acrimonious history between Gunns and many in the Tasmanian community was acknowledged by the company head.
Well, there's some things I can't address, and they're things of the past, and they are in the past, and we won't be returning to those. But things like transparency, reference groups, working with the community, we're up for that and we'll be doing it.
Greg Lestrange accepts the company won't win over everybody for the project. What could Gunns do for you to ever give approval for a pulp mill here in the valley across from where you live?
I'd say nothing.
No pulp mill! No pulp mill! Pulp mill opponents have warned their campaign will be bigger than that against the Franklin Dam.
You get arrested campaigning against the pulp mill, you end up in a prison run by the head of the Greens. Well, that's pretty bizarre, isn't it?